to Soul Elevation, guiding your ascension to new heights. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin, and this is a great episode with Michael McAdams, where we talk about receiving spirit messages. He shares some deep and rich messages received by his mother, and we talk about how you can develop and discern the spirit messages which are already coming to you that you may not be aware of. Michael McAdams has felt a sense of destiny and purpose his entire life. A lifelong, sincere seeker of truth, Michael has endeavored to reach out with an open mind to all sources available. Brought up in the Pentecostal church, Michael's uncle was a fiery Pentecostal preacher by the name of John W. Sullivan. Although Michael has always felt more spiritual than religious, communication from the highest possible source has been his goal as he enables his mind to receive information and direction that allows him to help the greatest number of people. Michael's the author of An Angel Told Me So, where he shares remarkable experiences of his late mother, Wilma Jean Jones, who received messages from spirit teachers for more than 22 years. These teachings provide a roadmap for personal spiritual development, offering listeners actionable steps. So we'll get into it in just a moment, but first, I'm so excited to share about my book, Your Authentic Awakening, a guide to everyday spiritual living, which will be available this spring. This book is designed to help you reach new heights of spiritual awakening. It's full of spiritual guidance, practical tools, and captivating personal stories, all working together to expand your consciousness and open your heart. Find out more on karagoodwin.com, including how to get your own signed copy. And now, enjoy this episode. Well, welcome, Michael. I'm so excited to have you here today and get to talk about angels. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you, Kara. I really appreciate you having me as a guest.
Well, and I'm super excited to know that you're just next door to me in Indiana, and you're in Ohio, and we're neighbors.
Not that far away.
Yeah. So let's start by talking about your spiritual path and what led up to where you are now in the writing of your book.
I was brought up with a foundation of faith. My entire family were church-based, Bible-based. My grandmother was a Pentecostal preacher. She pastored a small Pentecostal church just north of Cincinnati. My uncle was a fiery Pentecostal pastor, and he had founded churches in Florida, Kentucky, and Ohio.
Now, what do you mean by a fiery?
Passionate,
Okay.
pastor, old time religion.
Okay. All right.
Tent revivals. He could move a crowd.
Wow.
And long before these big mega churches with thousands of people that would show up, the church that he pastored in Middletown, Ohio, about halfway between Dayton and Cincinnati, the Full Gospel Tabernacle. It was a fairly good sized church, but on a Sunday service, they would have 12 and 1,300 people that would show up because they would post the attendance, and it was standing room only. There wasn't a single spot in any pew that was available. They were even standing up in the balcony where the choir was.
Wow.
So he could move a crowd. I attended church. I have like I said, a foundation of faith. But I've always felt that there had to be more. There had to be. And I had questions when I was young. And as we get older, a lot of people become more spiritual than religious. We know the story. We have that foundation of faith. But again, if we're open and seekers, on my website, spiritspeaks.com, it says, when the student is ready, a teacher will appear. And for me, that's the way my life has gone. Being a seeker, you attract to you people, books, movies, any information that will allow you to take that next step. And I've seen that pretty much all my life.
Well, and I know that your mom has had a big impact on your faith, your evolving faith. And you did start to say when you were like your grandma.
Like I said, Pentecostal pastor. And she would receive sermons dictated to her mind in thought that she would write down and preach in church. And she would also receive verses to songs that she would write down and put to music. And in the book, An Angel Told Me So, there in the photo gallery, there are 6 verses to a song that my grandmother received lying in a hospital in Columbus. They had taken her by ambulance from Dayton to Cincinnati. She had sugar diabetes. They didn't think she was going to make it. And she was lying in a room by herself. She had praying, and she had pencil and paper beside her bed. And these words started to come into her mind. And she wrote those words down, and that was 6 verses to a psalm. And when my grandmother would receive these sermons dictated to her mind, I remember when I was young, she would say that God had spoken to her heart and given her that information. That's the perspective that someone with a church-based, Bible-based foundation is going to interpret anything that they receive. People who are that God speaking to her heart. People who are more spiritual in nature, who read metaphysical material, we read and learn about spirit guide, spirit teachers, master teachers. We know that we're not alone. And repeatedly, whether it's small events or larger decisions we need to make, we are spoken to, guided, directed, supported. Driving in a car by yourself, radio turned off, not really thinking about anything, I'd slow down up ahead if I were you. Where does that come from? And that's happened to me. I would drive, my dad had retired in Florida, had a small place down there, would spend 6 months down there in the winter and then 6 months up here. And I would drive down good old Interstate 75, straight through all the way about 12, 13 hours by myself. And I was cruising through Georgia, had cruise set on 80, speed limit 70. They'll give you 10. They may not give you 11, but they'll give you 10. And I, not thinking about anything, and the thought came into my mind, I'd slow down up ahead if I were you. And I glanced in the rearview mirror, didn't see anything, but I shut cruise off on the steering wheel, let the car coast down to about 72, topped a little rise in the freeway. There sat a Georgia State Highway Patrol. Now, whether or not he would have come out after me at 80, or if they see you tap the brakes, they know you're paying attention. But just the fact that I was obedient, accepted that and acted on it, that's the way it works. Start with the little things. The Bible says, test the spirit. These spirit teachers, they don't mind taking a quiz. Just challenge them, test them, see what happens.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that we have that pesky little gift called free will. And we can accept or reject any advice, guidance, direction, or support that we're given. And if we do reject that advice, normally we do so at our own peril.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So keep telling us about your spiritual evolution. You were saying that you have this religious base, this faith base. How has it changed and evolved over your life?
Well, the nice thing about having a foundation of faith is it gives you something to build on. And you have that foundation. I've actually gone through a number of information, books, movies. I actually used to do psychic readings. I had a table in Cincinnati with a group called Psychic World, and I did psychometry, could hold rings, watches, keys, anything that carried a person's vibration. And I had a legal tablet, and I would just not pump them for information, just ask their first name, and they would give me something to hold. And I would get a message, sometimes page and a half. And when it got done, it would stop. I'd read it to them. Sometimes they'd cry. And it was more confirmation as to what they were going through with instead of actual prophecy. But this is information that's available to everyone who's willing to tune in and receive. And people asked, they said, well, what do you need to do to be receptive? And I said, just relax your mind, establish an aura of protection. You are opening your mind. Allow no negativity or any negative thoughts to enter your thought system. And then just continue to receive and stay with it every day. Some people think you have to drop deep in meditation with incense and candles. Some people may think you have to go do a yoga trance, and you don't have to do any of that because we have that connection available constantly. In the book, one of the messages said, we are here for you as close as your heartbeat.
Well, that's wonderful. And I know that you have talked about spiritual teachers, masters, and so forth. How do spiritual teachers or spirit teachers differ from angels?
They don't. They are the same beings. Spirit teachers are angels. just viewed from a different perspective, one religious, one spiritual. And in the book, these messages and teachings, many of them have been signed with the name of the spirit teacher that presented the message. And on my website, there are tabs at the top. Website again is spiritspeaks.com. Tabs at the top, bio for myself, bio for my mother. And there's a tab for a television interview that my mother gave in Cincinnati. Wilma Jean Jones was her name. And posted on her interview is a message from volume 2 of the book, which is not out yet. This was the only time in a session where Wilma was led to sit down and receive. 2 different spirit teachers moved in the same session, gave 2 different messages, and signed 2 different names. And it was obvious that the second teacher was a different teacher than the first because the whole cadence and phrasing of the message is different. Now, I have this first teacher's message. It was really little more than a long paragraph, but it's really deep and profound. May I share this with you and your audience?
Please. Yeah.
And again, when she was led to sit down in these dedicated sessions, my mother had received in thought, like most of all of us do. On the back cover of the book, there is a message that my mother received in thought, just working around the kitchen one day, that she felt was confirmation she should put these messages and teachings in a book. But when she was led to sit down in these dedicated sessions, which would take 3 to 4 hours to get a message, she would get a message for her and a message for me. She had set up an electric typewriter in her kitchen. And she would go in, say a prayer, light a candle. You are opening your mind, ask for protection. And she would see 3 or 4 words just float into her mind. Those words would not go away until she typed them. Once she typed those 3 or 4 words, they would just fade away and 3 or 4 more would show up. That's how she got these messages, full page, single space type, many times with no paragraphs. And this wasn't channeling. This wasn't automatic writing. She was taking dictation. But the message that she received in this time where the 2 spirit teachers moved in, I will share this with you. There is a resurrection period through which man must travel in order to come into the realm of things godlike. You are to consume and digest all that is given here, as this comes from one highly qualified to meet the needs of this generation. You are not the sole property of yourselves. God still holds the everlasting command over your being, and in him must one take refuge. You are to be considered as one who has been stripped of all belongings and left to die by the wayside. In this manner, are you then open to any help that would be forthcoming? You are by your very nature ones who would depend upon your own intellect to carry you through. However, by giving of your soul into the hands of God, you prosper and develop more freely into that which denies the outcome of some situations, knowing full well that it is the hand of God leading and directing you so that you may arise victorious in the end. There is never a time when you will be without the Father, nor his ever-loving approaches, to see that you follow the path that directs you homeward. Take note that we say homeward, as your heavenly Father so resides in that vast insurmountable environment of time and space, so shall ye abide in joint communication with him by the grace with which he covers you, and by your ability to accept this grace and use it for your own development. There are others here who wish to make themselves known to you, so I will step aside for this time. My love and devotion follows you as you trod onward, but ever faithful to your goal. That message was signed, your loving guide. Now, the next to the last line is the line that caught my attention, even though it was a really good message. He says, there are others here who wish to make themselves known to you. My question is, who are the others and where is here? What do you mean there are others here? Where are you in relation to us on this physical plane?
Wow. And so, did you get insights into those questions?
Well, these spirit teachers in these messages repeatedly refer themselves in first person. We feel, we believe, we advise. Our view encompasses more than your view can comprehend. One line in a message said, we hear the spirit cries above the words you speak. Who talks like that? I don't talk like that. But when this first spirit teacher moved in, saying that there were others here, a second teacher moved in, dictated a 1.5-page long message. And these messages and teachings repeatedly end with a really deep last line or a profound last paragraph. And this second teacher moved in, like I said, it was about a 1.5-page message, but the last paragraph was extremely profound. May I share this with you and your audience?
Please.
So this was the last message of this spirit teacher's message. You are not as sheep herded here and there, but you are likened unto the lamb that is cared for individually, nourished and loved until the full and total development allows it to be master of itself. So is man so kept and denied only those things that would not in the long run nourish his spirit. God is all wise and loving in his dispensations. We are not to judge the workings of our Father, nor are we to judge each other. Work always to improve your own beings, for in the end time, there lies your soul, with all the nourishment that you have given it, totally dependent upon the outcome of your intentions.
Wow.
And that message was signed, your loving spiritual teacher. So we had two messages, one signed, your loving guide, the other signed, your loving spiritual teacher. And throughout these messages, different signatures would show up. Not all of them were signed, but my mother received a message for her that was signed, your spiritual counterpart. I've received messages to me that were signed, your spirit brothers, your spirit life. And these messages and teachings in the book, when she was led to sit down in these dedicated sessions, she would receive a message dictated for her, addressed to her. It's like her spirit teachers would move in and share a message with her. And then my spirit teachers would move in and share a message addressed to me. But I tell people, I said, when you get the book, read each message once as it was given for my mother and given for me. Then read that same message again as if it's being presented for you and see what hits. And it's amazing what hits. It's like these messages and teachings are woven with a universal thread. And everyone who has read these messages have said, well, this sounds like what I'm dealing with. This sounds like they're talking to me. Now, my mother went through experiences. I went through experiences that, other people may not have, but just the tone and the depth and quality of these teachings, I've never read anything like it before. And I've been involved in spiritual material for 30 years.
Wow. Well, tell us more about your mom. And did she always receive messages like this, or was there some sort of event that happened that opened her up to being able to perceive these messages?
My mom was, like I said, brought up in a foundation of faith family. My mom was extremely religious, daily reader of her Bible. But in the interview that she gives that's on the website, she had mentioned that when she was young, when we were little, my sister and I, she'd be standing at the sink doing dishes, and she would be spoken to. She would receive teachings in her mind. She didn't write it down at the time, but I remember that she said that this was really good indeed. But she had a little hard time. I had gotten involved in spiritual material, various books and that sort of thing. And she wasn't real sure about it. And I asked her one day, I said, can you have an open mind? And she said, yes. She said, I can have an open mind. And she began to get involved in this material, went to a couple of these groups where I would have a table. She got to know the lady who was in charge of this conference, this monthly meeting. And she had been spoken to. She would always say, thank you, Spirit, when information she was given, events which she was told would work out in her favor. She was always supported and attentive to the information that was given. And that's really all it takes for people to be able to stay in contact and learn to communicate with their own spirit guides, spirit teachers, angels, if that's your preferred term that you're more comfortable with. But in all of the signatures and all of the messages that they had given to us over a period of 22 years, they were always signed, your loving guide, your loving spiritual teacher, or plural, your loving spiritual teachers. There wasn't any message that was ever signed that was signed, your loving angel, your guardian angel. But spirit teachers are angels, again, just viewed from a different perspective.
Mm, okay. And so was it later in her journey that she began to um, write these things down in terms of the content of the book? An angel told me so. Were those messages that she, you mentioned about the typewriter, and because I understand that she was getting these kind of on the fly for a long time, then it sounds like she started to record them, and that was how you got the content of the book, maybe?
When, like I said, she had received, like most all of us do, or receive usually in a thought. But she had started to be led to sit down in these dedicated sessions. And that's when she set up her electric typewriter and started writing everything down. But was working around the kitchen one day. Uh, and these words started to come into her mind. She knew it was incoming. She grabbed pen and paper. She had beautiful handwriting and wrote this out in longhand. And she received a message that she felt was confirmation she should put these messages and teachings in a book. She'd been praying about it. And these messages and teachings for her part were a little personal, mine too, for what we were dealing with. But this message, again, is on the back cover of the book. May I share this with you and your audience?
Please.
All right. So again, words started coming to her mind, and this is the message that was given. Emptiness is part of fulfillment. Let your resources fill the void left so the distinction of your purpose can be found. Expression is always self-explanatory. Therefore, look inside and anchor all your beliefs beside those still waters that will take away your troubled view and renew your strength to recapture that which was lost, but is now found to be adequate to pursue the course set before you. And as you reconcile your being to represent those qualities that have been left intact, God will see to it that although circumstances have been trying, to say the least, your weariness will disappear as clouds once removed allow the sun to shine to dispel the gloom and darkness that has pervaded your countenance. And as once described before, a token of this presence will be deposited to your account and books recorded in his name.
Wow.
Like I said, she was a little hesitant about putting these in a book. And to be honest, she had received these messages for 22 years, enough material to fill three volumes of a book. But she had passed away before I was able to connect with the publisher and get the first book out. But I like to feel we're still working together.
Of course. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. So you have been saying we all receive these messages. And I know for a lot of people, it's not as clear. They don't feel it or perceive it as clearly as your mom did or you do. How do you recommend that others connect or strengthen their connection with messages from their spirit team?
Well, it starts out as the little things. Like you said, inclinations. I've had people talk about the parking spot angel. It's a spirit teacher. And, Christmas time, you have to go to the mall. You hate to, it's going to be jammed. But you force yourself to go and you pull into the mall and you're on the road inside the area that runs parallel with the mall. And you think, I'm going to take a left here and look for a parking spot. And a thought comes into your mind, go up 2 more aisles and make a left. You think, what have I got to lose? I'm obedient. I'm just looking for a spot. So you go up 2 more aisles and make a left and you're driving toward the mall. No spots, no spots, no spots, no spots. You get almost to the end of the aisle, close to the mall. 3 cars back, a car backs out, and there's your spot. How did they know? I have a friend of mine who swears she has a parking spot angel, and everywhere she goes, she asks for a spot up close, and she gets it every single time.
Wow.
So people, like I said, they can start out small with the small things. We reach out to these spirit teachers, angels, again, if that's your preferred term, but we reach out in prayer, or we can reach out in thought. And these spirit teachers exist in a spiritual realm adjacent to this physical plane, just as vast, just as almost incomprehensibly vast, separated by a veil, a vibration, a frequency. We don't know the mechanism that separates us from the spiritual realm, but it's real and it's easily accessible if we just open our mind, a set up a protection, an aura of protection, a thought, and if any information comes in that you did not think and you don't agree with, just reject it, discard it. We have that pesky little thing called free will, and we can accept or reject any advice, guidance, direction, or support that we're given. So that's the way that it works. And, for people, like I said, there are books, there's information, there's movies. I share 3 movies with people that I tell them will open portals in their mind. They're on my website in the Great Links page. There's additional information. Edgar Casey, are you familiar with
Oh,
Edgar Casey?
yes, I love his work. Yeah,
Do you know he
fascinating.
lived in Dayton, Ohio for a year and a half?
Really?
Yeah. He had a
Wow.
photography studio
Yes,
on 3rd Street
yes,
or
right.
1st Street, I think. And he was amazing.
Mm.
He was amazing. So there's a book on my Great Links page that I recommend. And there's a book titled the Urantia book. Have you ever heard of the Urantia book?
That sounds familiar, but please tell me. I can't think off the top of my head.
It's a book sponsored by a foundation out of Chicago. Urantia is their name for the earth. So it's really the earth book. This book was transmitted through an individual in 1935, first published in 1955. It's been translated into 16 languages, over 4 million copies in print.
Wow.
And it's my light reading, 2,107 pages.
Oh, my word. Wow.
But you don't read it like a novel. The book is a series of papers that are numbered and titled. And in the index, that papers have the author out to the right of each paper. Well, the authors are not people. They're celestial beings.
Wow.
And this is just an interesting account of just so many different things. A little deep for most people to start with. I recommend mine first because if people, all of our lives, we've been told to have faith that heaven exists, faith that when we cross over, that we're going to go to either the good place or the bad place. And I have always questioned, people that believe in hell and in damnation for eternity. I knew a lady one time that had a son that was constantly getting in trouble. They bailed him out. They spent money on attorneys and fines. And it was just one thing after another. She was extremely religious, Baptist, carried her Bible around with her. She knew she was going to heaven when she died. But she also knew all the information and the material that I was involved in. And I asked her one time, I said, is there anything that your son could do, anything at all, that would cause you not to want to give him another chance? And she just put her head down and she said, no. And I said, what makes you think God loves us any less? Do you really believe that in this short time of existence that we live, whether you're a gangbanger shot by another person on the streets of Chicago at 15, taken in a car accident at 40, or live to be a ripe old age, do you really think that this short time in existence is going to cause us to spend all eternity forever and ever with no chance for reprieve because we were stupid, because we had bad parents, chose bad friends? We're all a product of our choices and decisions. So the information is available to anyone who's interested. And if you feel like you're a seeker, on my website, it says for all sincere seekers of truth. And at the very top, when you go to the website, spiritspeaks.com, it says Spirit speaks to the hungry soul. If you have a hungry soul, you will be given the information.
Mm, that's beautiful. So as people develop, they follow the tips and they connect with your resources, maybe they will feel like they're starting to perceive the messages that we're all getting, but maybe not perceiving all the time. How can people determine the authenticity? So you mentioned about like, well, we can reject the thought if we don't agree with it. But what about that separation between the thoughts that we're generating versus guidance? How have you been able to navigate that?
Thoughts that are incoming from our spirit teachers they have a certain feel in your mind. And if people can tune into that, try and tune out the physical, uh, you can tell the difference between a thought that you think and a thought that's incoming. Like I said, it's a different feeling in your mind. It's subtle. But once you can identify that and open that channel, tune into that information, then it's easy to separate from any information that we would think on our own. And there's a lot of things that we go through and emotions kick in where we may think things that we shouldn't or that are not beneficial to our journey. And you just separate that, discard the ones that you don't feel are in your best interest, and then keep on keeping on. That's about all you can do. I've had people, they say, well, your grandmother received, your mother received. They said, do you receive? And I said, yes, I've been spoken to. And when I was first looking for a publisher, I was on a number of different publisher websites. One of the websites I was on asked questions about your work. One of the questions was, what makes your material unique? Why would anyone want to read this? Great question. And I was sitting where I'm sitting right now at my computer. I didn't really even ask for an answer. I just relaxed my mind, and an answer started to be dictated to my mind. It was 12 lines long, and I was just typing it down. Once it got to the end, it stopped. May I share this answer with you?
Please.
So the question was, what makes your material unique? And this is the answer that I was given. The uniqueness of any material is in the manner in which it touches the soul. An open and searching mind pulls the soul and the body in which it inhabits onward and upward with hunger and determination in its quest for spiritual nourishment, ever mindful that the path upon which we walk is the path toward God. Lives lived, experiences endured, goals accomplished, and loved ones lost are all encounters upon that path. Strive always for the highest possible communication with our Heavenly Father. Believe in yourself as the Father within you is guiding, leading, directing, and comforting you upon this journey that we call life. Blessings be upon you as you walk your chosen pathway.
That's beautiful.
That was not me.
Wonderful. Yeah.
And we're all capable, again, of receiving in this manner. Now, not everyone is going to start out with information this deep, this more profound. But by reading the messages and teachings in An Angel Told Me So, that this is proof, real proof of the existence of a spiritual realm on the other side of this physical plane. We have actual spirit teachers dictating messages through my mother, Wilma, that appear to apply to everyone who reads them. And like I said, my life, when a student is ready, a teacher will appear. That seeking, that desire to know, that drive to know will lead you to books, movies, information, people, interviews, your podcast, and it will lead people on a path. And what we're doing, what I'm doing, what you're doing is standing somewhere, shining a light on the path for the next step for whomever is ready to take it. But you have to be willing to take that next step.
There's that free will again. That pesky
That's
free
true.
will. Oh, that's beautiful. Well, I thank you for your service and in helping to light the path. It's just beautiful. Tell people you've talked about your website, but for people who want to dive into your work more, how can they connect with you?
Well, spiritspeaks.com is the website. I said there are tabs at the top. You can watch Wilma's television interview. Scroll down. She's the pretty lady in white on the left. You can read the message from the spirit teacher that moved in. If you scroll down to the middle of the homepage, there's a painting that I have at home, and there are 5 hidden messages in that painting. So you can take the journey through the painting, find the hidden messages, Click on it once, it'll give you instructions. Move your mouse around on the objects in the painting. When you find a hidden message, a little hand comes up, left click, and a writing comes up that corresponds with what you clicked on in the painting. You don't want to go back or you'll find the same message again. Just stay there with that painting and look for the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. The fifth message is the message that my mother received in thought that came to her in the kitchen, that she should put these messages and teachings in the book. So that information is available. There's a Great Lakes page with information to even more advanced teachings, the Urantia book, Edgar Casey's book. But just the information is available, and it just depends on where you are at in your journey and what you're open to. Nothing is overwhelming. It's all helpful. And it just helps you to realize, I tell people, I said, there is no death. We never really die. It's just graduation. We ride around in these bodies the way we ride around in our cars. These bodies are just a vehicle to negotiate this physical plane. And when we cross over, our body wears out. We're taken by accident. We're then led to a realm of evaluation, be able to look back and see what we did, and then maybe find out what our next assignment is. We don't really know, but this will help people find out and have confidence in being able to tune into their own spirit teachers as these messages and teachings seem to apply to what they're going through.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Michael. This has been just an absolute joy. I really appreciate it.
I thank you, Karen. Thank you very much. And I would like to stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to this episode of Soul Elevation. Please take a moment to think about someone in your life who might be uplifted or have their curiosity sparked by this content, and send it on to them. Let's keep sharing high-frequency, empowering content to reinforce the highest potential for humanity. I also invite you to subscribe to this content. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you for the next episode of Soul Elevation.